having an inner stem to not having an inner stem, as well as the ways that we apply the wood strips to the station forms. I'm going to be demonstrating how to build a wood strip canoe using the inner stem and not using the inner stem, as well as a variety of different ways to apply the cedar strips. I hope that you see as we go along that there's not one right way and one wrong way to build a wood strip boat, but a lot of different ways that will accomplish the same or similar end product. What I'd like you to do is just observe the different methods that I have here in these videos and then choose what you think is the best method for you. And then hopefully you'll also realize that it's okay to mix and match and use different techniques in different situations. What I do is I use some masking tape. Just, simple plain 1-inch masking tape, and that helps to hold the strips in place while I line it up. And then you can see, building without the inner stem, this strip is overlapping the strip that I've cut on an angle. And I just let it hang out the end, and then I'll trim that off later on. Just put a bit of glue. People are going to ask what kind of glue I use, and this is not the kind. This is just the glue bottle that I liberated that seems to work perfect, but I just use regular carpenter's glue. Okay, and to hold the strips down the rest of the way, in addition to the tape isn't going to hold them firm enough. It's also not going to give the strip the contour of the boat. Okay, it'll just hold it vertically down, but it's not going to allow the strip to build. So I use these cleats, okay? At least I call them cleats. Just a little piece of wood, thin piece of wood with a notch. Okay, it's just slightly greater than 1/4 of an inch. And then I just slide them down onto the strip. Push the strip down firmly. Take a C-clamp. C-clamp overlaps the cleat and the station form, and then it's pulled tight, just like that. Even if you've chosen to build your wood strip canoe staple-free, there's nothing wrong with using a staple from time to time to hold a strip down when you're faced with difficult locations and compound curves. A staple, once every 8 feet or so, will not be noticed and relieve a lot of stress and frustration as you're building. joining two shorter strips together to make a long strip is easy. All I do is use a homemade miter jig. I put both strips in at the same time and make one cut. So the only real thing to think about when you're using shorter strips is where your joints are going to be. Okay, so I've got it's full length Western Red Cedar and shorter lengths of Ontario Yellow Cedar. Okay, so this part strip is Ontario Yellow Cedar, and then these three are full length Western Red Cedar, and then I have two shorter length Ontario Yellow Cedar that I've joined together. So in these previous Yellow Cedar strips, I have one joint here, and then another joint at station number 1, okay, right here. And that's what you just need to have in mind when you're using shorter strips. Don't stack all your joints in the same place, and try to stagger them from end to end and in different positions. If you're building your full canoe with shorter strips, it'll become a bit challenging, but it's totally doable, okay? You don't have to have your joints in the middle, you can have them on a station form, so even staggering them 6 inches is going to offset it enough, all right? And just figure out the pattern that you're working on, and then when you get to your 10th strip, you can easily just begin that pattern again, and you'll have a 10 strip gap between your joints. So it's easy enough. Okay, so the only other thing that I should point out is what I do to attach them is I have a little, just a piece of a strip, and I put some masking tape on one side, and then when I lay up the next strip, I'm going to take this and put it on the inside, and then I'm going to take my clamp and I'm going to clamp right on top of the joint. Okay? You can use a spring clamp, or you can use a C clamp, or a couple spring clamps, a couple C clamps, whatever's going to hold that joint together. So once the glue dries, it forms a nice seamless strip. And yeah, it's that easy. Before we get too far up stripping the hull, one thing you may notice, or may not have, is that I've marked along the edge of the station forms a little line. Now what that represents is a false water line, okay? And the reason why I say that it's a false water line is because it is not the actual water line on the canoe, but it'll be close, it'll be somewhere around there. And how I know that is that the canoe has a 4-inch water line. So what I've done is from the station forms, I've measured down 4 inches and then brought that line over to the edge, okay? Up near the stems, it's definitely not going to be the water line, okay? But near the middle of the canoe, it'll be pretty close. So the purpose of doing that is that from that marker line down to the shear line is the location for doing any type of feature element, okay? So if you want to put some kind of pattern or darker strips, that's the area that really you should be focusing on. So what I'm doing is I'm adding a much darker western red cedar strip that's going to be just above the water line near the center of the canoe, and then it'll rise up towards the stem.